Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a moment that perfectly captures the uncomfortable truth about the British media's treatment of Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and the very specific way that treatment shifts when women of colour are present in the room. Because suddenly, the tone changes, the posture softens, the bitterness gets dialed back. The knives go back into their drawers. It's almost comical watching certain presenters adjust their energy the moment they realise the people sitting across from them aren't going to tolerate the usual Meghan-bashing routine. And that brings us to the perfect example of this dynamic. Jeremy Vine and James Max, two men who've made hating Meghan practically a personality trait, suddenly toning down their trolling the moment two women of colour dared to defend her on air. What we're about to break down isn't just a segment, it's a blueprint, a whole case study on selective bullying, performative objectivity, and the hypocrisy that has infected the UK media ecosystem for years. Let's get into it. The moment the conversation started, you could feel it. Jeremy Vine and James Max, two commentators who normally attack Meghan with the confidence of men who expect no pushback, suddenly became gentle, softer, careful, almost polite. And why? Because this time the panel wasn't stacked in their favour. This time they weren't surrounded by people who would cheer at every insult toward Meghan. Instead, there were two women of colour, articulate, sharp, and unbothered by their usual scripts. And the second the conversation shifted toward Meghan, the atmosphere changed like someone lowered the temperature in the room. These two men, known for their snark, their sarcasm, their tired talking points, suddenly didn't want to look like the bitchy men they often become whenever Meghan's name is mentioned. And you know what? They were right to be cautious. Because the way they talk about Meghan when no women of colour are present is wildly different from how they behave when women who see through the racial undertones are sitting across from them. This was not a debate. This was exposure. One of the funniest moments was watching James Max, a man who has dragged Meghan in more segments than he probably wants to admit, suddenly pretend he has only one issue with her. One issue, one singular complaint. As if there isn't a full catalogue of clips where he nitpicks everything from her tone, to her clothes, to her existence. But now, on this day, he's pretending he's only bothered by one harmless thing. It was performance art, and it gets even funnier. Because the one issue he claims to have with Meghan is something that now applies perfectly to William and Charles, both of whom are reportedly begging production companies for reality-style content and streaming deals. So the question becomes, if James Max was offended when Meghan and Harry pursued media work, where is that energy for the future king? Where is that analysis for the monarch who wants his own content pipeline? It doesn't exist. Because the rule was never about media work. The rule was about Meghan doing media work. Hypocrisy is not an accident. It's the strategy. Then there's Jeremy Vine asking, "You think she has been bullied?" As if bullying Meghan is something that can even be debated at this point. As if it's a matter of opinion rather than documented fact. As if the entire world didn't watch the UK tabloids tear her apart day after day, month after month, year after year. And in that moment, Jeremy revealed something he may not have intended. He knows she's been bullied. He knows it so deeply that even questioning it sounded forced. Because how else do you explain why Meghan and Harry left the UK? How else do you explain the headlines, the smear campaigns, the palace leaks, the hate amplified by the press, the racial undertones, the coordinated attacks? There is no version of reality where Meghan was not bullied. Only versions where people pretend she wasn't so they can avoid confronting the racism that drives the coverage. And Jeremy asking that question is the clearest signal yet that the media knows the truth, but chooses denial because the truth implicates them. Then we have Chizzy's show and her disbelief at how Meghan manages to be the centre of UK media conversation even when she hasn't done anything. The woman can literally breathe, and it becomes a debate. Meghan gets a name drop on the show, and immediately the panel twists themselves into intellectual pretzels, trying to explain why they're talking about her again. Meanwhile, in the United States, nothing. Silence, calm, normalcy. Because American media isn't obsessed with Meghan. When there's a negative story, it's almost always traced back to the UK, the source of the noise, the outrage, the drama. It is the UK that treats Meghan like an active royal, like a future monarch, like someone they need constant updates on. It is the UK that behaves as though Harry and Meghan are not private citizens living on another continent. It is the UK that treats Meghan with a level of scrutiny it doesn't even apply to Princess Anne, Edward, Sophie, or even Catherine. Why? Because Meghan became their cultural fixation. She became their lightning rod. She became their scapegoat, their entertainment, their distraction. This brings us to the greatest hypocrisy of all, the obsession with protocol. UK media loves to hide behind protocol when they want to attack Meghan. Suddenly, everything is about royal rules, royal order, royal formalities. But if protocol truly mattered, why don't they demand daily updates on Catherine, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, the actual Prince of Wales? Why is protocol only a conversation when Meghan is involved? Because it was never about protocol. It was always about control. They want her announced if it benefits them. They don't want her announced if it makes her look respected. They want rules applied when it harms her. They suspend rules when it protects others. There is one protocol for royals, another protocol for public figures, and a third, harsher, uglier protocol reserved exclusively for Meghan Markle. Everything we've watched in the last 6 years comes down to one word: hypocrisy. A nation that claims to value fairness, a press that claims to value balance, commentators who claim to value logic. All completely abandon those values the moment Meghan enters the conversation. She becomes the exception to every rule, the target of every double standard, the subject of every unnecessary analysis. She is scrutinized for things others are praised for, attacked for things others get away with, questioned for things others are protected over. And all of this, happened in public, documented, recorded, visible to the world. Which is why the media's recent attempts at subtlety, like James Max pretending he has just one issue, come across as weak, flimsy and transparent. They don't want to appear racist. They don't want to appear misogynistic. They don't want to appear threatened. But their actions have been loud for years, and the internet has a long memory. So why does this particular segment matter? Because it exposes the truth. Their tone only changes when accountability enters the room. When women of colour sit across from them, they suddenly lower their voices, choose their words, hide their venom, adjust their posture, rebrand their outrage, because deep down they know exactly what they've been doing, and they know who sees it clearly. The presence of black and brown women disrupts their comfort. It forces them to behave. It forces them to pretend. And nothing reveals guilt faster than a sudden shift in behaviour. And that's where we'll wrap today's breakdown. What we witnessed wasn't just a TV moment. It was a revelation of how the UK media shapes its image, depending on who is watching. It was a demonstration of how racial bias operates quietly, subtly, but unmistakably in real time. And it was another reminder that Meghan has become a mirror, a reflection of the UK's most uncomfortable truths. Thank you for tuning in today. Stay informed, stay sharp, and stay honest, because that's what they fear most. We'll talk again in the next one.